is to write, visualize, auto-suggest, listen to something. Your first hour, that's how you burn that image in your mind. Okay? That's how you're going to burn it in your mind. So I will tell you, the results always tell us what image we're building. It will always tell us. It's great feedback, right? It'll tell us. So don't get into busy work. Get into practice. But all practice isn't perfect. Okay? If I'm not doing my processes with emotion, all I'm doing is checking the box. There's no power. I may as well stop doing it. Because at the end of the day, our feeling is what the power connects to. That's what it connects to, is the feeling. I'm emotionally involved. I'm emotionally involved. You know when you get emotionally involved in present results, it's like, oh my God, this feels like crap, right? It feels like crap, right? Well, you're emotionally involved and can't stop yourself because it's already gotten to your subconscious mind. So we want to reverse it in our favor. So you want to spend time building your image. You want to spend time, like I'm telling you, like all day long, when you're doing this right, you're thinking from your image. And you're going to know when your image is really on a subconscious level because you're making different decisions. You're not creating contracts. I have a lot of people who say, you know, I'm not going to do this until I get this result. That's not an aware person. That is not an aware person. That is a person coming from scarcity. That is a person coming from a contract they made with themselves that is not accurate. And that is a person who's always going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And I will tell you that. What our decisions are not determined by me. Your decision should not be determined by you. They should be determined by how you want to live. So the first question we start with before we ever build an image is, how am I currently living? Am I living the way I want to live? Am I living in bondage? Even though I'm creating great results, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. Okay? Well, that wouldn't be how I want you guys to live. I want you to live the way you want to live. I have a client that I'm mentoring right now. His name's Osama. He's a doctor in Houston. And he came to me a few months ago. And he wanted me to coach him. I told him no. Because he came to me like a year ago. And then he said, I want to get coached by you. We have an agreement. And then he's like, let's just do one session. I said no. I wouldn't kick him off. Well, he came back again. Monica gets him on the phone with me. And I said, Osama, I don't want to coach you. And I said, I only coach people who follow through. And what you did last year, you're not a great fit for me. He said, Arash, I made a mistake. I really want to get coached by you. He said, I will prove it to you. I'm sending you $10,000 for one call. I said, okay. That's what happened. So I was like, okay. So then I do this one call, and this dude has so much desire. I couldn't help but coach him. And I said, let's try it for 3 months. But I'm only going to coach you once a month. So I coached him once a month. First time I coached him, he was working 7 days a week. He was grinding. And he never earned $1 million before. He earned his first $1 million in 9 months last year. But this is just following me online. He said, I listened to your guys' podcast. Every podcast, he said, I listened to at least 50 times. And just like I told you guys to eliminate stuff, okay? First thing I did was I got him to eliminate. By the end of the 90 days, he earned $1 million in 90 days. But you know, I said, tell me what you've been doing. He goes, if you tell me to do something, I do it non-negotiable. He said, do you know our coaching calls? I said, yeah. He said, I listen to them 80 times a month. He'll listen to every call we do a month 80 times. I've never had anyone do that. You know, and I said, why? Because he's getting the reps in. He's doing the repetition. You know, so when you are not doing the repetition, you're leaving so much on the table. So then you got to ask yourself, how good am I at the repetition? Okay, the repetition is what is going to get you emotionally involved with what you want. And do you know how many people I tell this to, that how few actually do it? How few actually do it. I will tell you that. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because they're negotiating with themselves. It's because they don't see the result right away, so they say, oh, I'm going to go to the next best thing. So they're trying to get this dopamine hit to feel good. Like, it feels good to read a book. It feels good to listen to something and you think you know it. You don't know it until it is part of your identity. Okay? So, why I'm telling you this is without the image, you're not going to get the result. And I promise you, you guys have a dominant image going on. And the result will tell you what that dominant image is. So, I want you to really decide who you're going to be. Like in 2026, to be different, you guys got to be different. And here's what happens. We got, on average, anywhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Okay? So people are trying to change their result without changing who they are. So they have the same thoughts, which create the same feeling, which create similar actions, and then they say, Arash, why have I not got my result yet? Because you're not changing the thinking. The thinking creates the vibration. Just simplify this. Thinking creates the vibration word. The vibration creates the type of actions we take. That's why you'll see someone who never takes any different actions, because they're not changing how they think. Like, that's why I wrote this book that's coming out in the next 10 days or 2 weeks. The reason I wrote Transform, and I did a video about it the other day, is because I see so many people want to change. They want the money, they want the relationship, they want the freedom, they want the emotional freedom, but they don't want to change. And that's why I created a blueprint on what I did to do that. But until we decide at the next level, like, our decisions can't be decisions that are in our comfort zone. Like, I will tell you, when you build the image, your next step is going to be so illogical of what you should be doing. It is going to be so illogical. Your intuition is going to give you the idea, and it's going to be so illogical to your current programming. And that's where most people fall. That's where they fall. That's where awareness is so important. So anytime it's illogical for me, anytime I feel resistance, because that's when you're going to feel it, that tells me I have to do it. I have to do it. But I will tell you, if you are not in love with your idea, you're not going to achieve it. You have to be in love with it. That's what an ideal is. It's an idea I'm in love with. I was telling Jeff yesterday, I said, you're never going to go create great things unless you fall in love with your goal. You have to fall in love with what you guys are doing. And I want you to really understand that you guys can change your identity every single day. You guys can think bigger every day. You know, I told you this when we were doing the call this week on Touching Lightning. Our soul is for perpetual increase. We are hardwired to get better every day. It's not something I force myself to get better. It's something I let happen because I'm working with a bigger idea. And most people are trying to get better. Don't try to get better. Make getting better your standard. That's just who I am. Every day I get better regardless of the circumstance. The hard part about this is you've got to hold the image regardless of your current circumstances. You've got to hold that regardless of the circumstances. Regardless. You know, I was at the gym this week, and I'm walking out of the gym, and then my present results came in front of me. And I just started laughing at it. And I said, you just watch what I'm about to do. You know, you just watch. See, you don't fight the paradigm. You attack it.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so my present results are like, you keep reaffirming your goal, you're not there. You know, and I just started laughing. I just started laughing because I have the awareness to understand what was actually happening. I didn't fight the paradigm. I just said, you watch what I'm about to do. And all of a sudden, the voice disappeared. You know, so I don't want you to fight it. But I want you to get rid of the bullshit contracts you guys have with yourself. I'm not good enough. You know, I'm not going to do this until this happens. Right? All you're doing is coming from scarcity. And you can't create the life you want coming from scarcity. So you guys have to let go of scarcity. You have to make scarcity dead in your life. See, the universe has no scarcity. You can see it everywhere. the only scarcity that exists in someone's awareness. Why? Because they're checking boxes. They think, oh, I know this. I know this. Well, if you know this, why are you not emotionally free? So we can always know it better. We can always know it better. Always know it better, right? And so you have to be a great student of you. That's why we got to study ourselves all day long. Because that's how you change. When I changed, truly changed, it was because I started studying me. I started studying why I was doing the things I was doing. And then I created the future self framework that I've given all of you. You know, whether you use it or not is up to you. But I remember I'm sitting with my mentor at a coffee table in Toronto. And he said, what do you study? And I said, I'm studying me. He said, tell me more about it. This sounds interesting. And I said, this is what I created. So every day, you know, I just gave him the future self framework of what I do. And he said, that is one of the best things I've heard. And he said, I love that you're doing that. Well, that's how I changed, because I was still studying the philosophy. I haven't missed a day of studying the philosophy in 21 years. In 21 years. Because it's part of my program. Like, it'd be harder for me not to study than to study. This morning before I came in, I had an audio play while I was getting ready. I'm always putting stuff in my mind. But when I started studying me, that's when everything changed. And that's why you guys have to study you. You got to start understanding, why am I allowing that trigger to come in? See, you have no, like, you cannot afford doubt. Like, you got to put this in your mind. You cannot afford doubt. You got to knock doubt out right when it comes up, because you are going to have doubt if you're going after something worthy. But when we talk about building a want, you want your want to be worth it. Like, I've never built a want to get a new house, because I know I trade my life for the goals. So I've never traded my life for a house. I've never traded my life for a car. I've never traded my life for anything material. Not because I don't love material. I think material things are great. But I traded my life for who I was becoming. So you guys got to pick a goal instead of a thing. A thing is not going to motivate you. You know, when you get a new car, you're like, God, I love this car. Then like a couple days later, it's just normal to you. You're like, oh, I got this car. You know, I'm not telling you guys don't go after material things. I think material things are great. But your goal should be connected to something bigger. And that's what's going to get you to stop operating from scarcity. Am I making sense? So think of your goal right now. And then ask yourself, what is my relationship with my goal? What is my connection with my goal? That is vitally important, because we got to breathe life into the goal. The goal has to become a love story. Because if I'm not in love with the goal, I'm not going to do it. I promise you, I am not going to do it. Now,
Arash, real quick.
Sure.
This seems to be a very important topic. These personal contracts that we've made with ourselves. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? I want to uncover. I might have them.
So everybody has them.
Yeah.
So you want to be aware of it and say, is this in harmony with who I'm becoming? You know, the biggest personal contracts people have is around money. They say, I'm not going to do this until I achieve this. That is a dumb idea. I'm going to tell you that. Because all you did was just limit yourself. I'm not asking you to be reckless, but I'm asking you to come from abundance. If something is going to create massive lift for you, would it be wise for you to do? I had a guy who asked if he can come to my house yesterday. I said, sure. He came to my house. And I'm coaching him. And I'm seeing a lot of the gaps. And I told him, I said, let me ask you something. Would you give me $50,000 if I give you $1 million? He said, yeah. And I said, well, would you really give it to me? Because I said, you are so close from going from 400 to $1 million. But you're not doing the work. And I said, if I could show you what to do, would you do it? And he said, yeah. Okay? I said, I mean all of it. He said, yeah. So the minute he left my house, he calls me. And he goes, do you think this is a good idea? I said, what is that? Yeah. And I said, what does it matter what I think? You know, I'm on the way. I did a photo shoot yesterday for the book, so I'm on the way driving. And I said, this is the number one thing that is keeping you from $1 million. See, the worst paradigm that's ingrained in every one of you, it was ingrained in me, is needing approval, needing to be liked. That's why most people don't step out and do a thing, because they're needing approval, right? I said, look, I know, because I'm really good at what I do. Like, I know I can do what I'm telling you. But it doesn't matter what I know. It depends, do you want to do it? You know, he's like, okay, let's do it. You know, and so he's doing it with me. And I will tell you this, but the fear comes in right away. You forget about your goal right away. You forget like about the life you want right away. Why? Because you go back into the physical side of you, you forget that you're a spiritual being, you forget you're hardwired for success. And that's what happens. So you have that second where you got to knock that doubt out. Because what happens? You go into survival mode. I don't want you guys in survival mode. I want you in creative mode. I want you in creative mode. I was telling Eunice this the other day. He's like, Arash, turning your annual income to monthly income, you start working with bigger numbers, bigger numbers, bigger numbers. I said, Eunice, the bigger you do, the numbers don't scare you anymore. The numbers, the bigger numbers become so accepted, so much more effortless. But it's just going to be dependent if you want $1 billion, or if you want 100 million, or if you want 10 million. Your want is going to tell you that. Your want is going to tell you. And so, go ahead.
I have a question for you. So, first of all, you gave my first review of my catalyst, right? So, but, you know, we talked 2 weeks ago about awareness, and I guess part of the awareness of the study, I realized that when I catch myself, I'm like, $1 billion, that becomes 5 billion. Well, why am I I catch myself, like, this is negotiating myself. So I guess part of the catalyst is just raising my level of awareness as far as where all my gaps are.
Yeah.
You already hit one.
I'm always looking for my gaps. I'm looking for them all the time. Because our gaps are our greatest gifts. Because if we don't take care of our gaps, we're not solving the problem to go from where we are to where we want to go. So our job is to solve the problem. So your job, Joe, if you look at your goal and you look at where you are, the gap between the two is the problem you have to solve. So I can't solve a problem if I'm the problem. So if I'm not building the right ideas, I'm the problem. Like I'm going to tell you guys this, your environment is crucial. You can't create greatness being around mediocrity. See, every time you're in an environment of lack of limitation, every time you talk to these people, their attitude is going inside of you. Even if you're aware, their attitude is going inside of you. And you're going to know once you're changing because the people around you start changing. You're going to start noticing that. The people around you start changing. Go ahead.
No. So one of the things you told me is think bigger.
Yeah.
And now I do, I actually, I put you on my back of my sport coats. Now I just think bigger.
Oh, that's good.
I'm getting dressed. I look at
You
the
see
back
it.
and might say, like, bigger, I might say, think bigger, whatever it is. But,
Yeah.
So it just makes me think, like, is $1 billion bigger, is $5 billion? I hear it now when people say to me, my goal is to get to 250, or my goal is to get, and when I say 5 billion, some people are like, whoa, I'm like, it's just a number. Like, and it's also, as soon as I said that, like you had suggested, everything around it is like, I have 20 ways to get to 5 billion. I just have to choose the path.
Yeah.
Things are coming.
You know, it's so easy to earn money. It is so easy if you really look at it. You know, when you're earning money, it's not hard. When you're actually earning money, it's easy, right? Think when you guys have ever earned money. Like you got a significant, you're like, oh my God, that was easy, right? That was easy. I'm speaking at a real estate event in March, and I told the real estate owner, he's talking to me about what they're doing, and he goes, you know, leaders, real estate people, they're cheap, you know, and I was like, I think you're cheap. That's what I told him. I said, I think you're cheap. And he goes, what? And I said, yeah. And I said, tell me your business. So he's telling me his business. You know, I said, why don't you create a coaching program with all the agents you have and charge $10,000 for a coaching program within your community? And he goes, I love that idea. So he tells me, yes, I'm going to do it. Well, I talked with him, he hasn't done it. That was 2 months later. That idea is dead. You got to understand, if we don't act on the idea becomes dead, right? But then he's like, I think I'm going to charge $9.97 for it. I said, don't even do it. Don't even do it because you're giving away all the value, you know? So you never worry about how it's going to happen. You know, the biggest thing that I want you guys to change is this, your perception. You've got to start changing your perception. You've got to start really changing this. Your perception should only be thinking of why something can happen. That's the only thing you should be thinking every day, why it can happen. And then you're going to figure out the how. But if I'm not thinking about why it's going to happen, I'm always going to think about, God, it seems so big. Okay? Now, let me read this. Go ahead.
Something that you've been, well, you probably always were saying, building a bigger idea.
Yeah.
And it's just something I've taken out. Yeah, it totally changes the perception.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always got to be bigger because I catch it when it's small. I catch it right away when I'm shrinking.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be bigger.
Everything we come from is always a higher image and a lower concern. Most people are coming from a higher concern and a lower image. And then they're like, why is there a delay? Why am I not getting what I want? It's always us. It is always us. Okay, you can grind your way to success. I think that's a terrible idea, because then you create a bad relationship with success. That's what's going to happen. And then you're going to give it away. You know, that's why our job is to constantly get better every day, upgrade our mindset, upgrade our skill set every day. Okay? But I want to read this to you. I wasn't planning on doing this right.
The lower concern is that we want to, are you saying we need to stay focused on the higher image and not on the things that don't matter? I mean,
Yeah.
The lower concern is the part where
No, the lower concern is a good thing. Okay? So when we're not even worried about fear, that's a lower concern. When we focus on a higher image, our mind always goes in the direction of what we focus on. Okay? See, the biggest obstacle to all of your goals is not capability, it's distraction. It is always distraction. So you've got to really strengthen your will. And if you don't strengthen your will, you're not going to achieve extraordinary goals. Okay? Like if you look at our goals, what do they demand? They demand confidence. So that means I have an unwavering belief that I'm going to do a thing. That's what confidence is. Okay? And you've got to just remove doubt from you. As soon as it comes up, because I'm not saying it's not going to come up, you've got to get it out of you right away. Get it out of you right away. Okay? But you've got to understand, you know, I want to dissect this. I want you guys to think of your goal. Okay? Just for a second. Put your goal in your mind. Now, I want you to observe your attitude. Not positive or negative. Was it expected? Because for a goal to get to the finish line, it's got to be expected. Like I already know I'm doing this. Okay? This is from Neville. I want to dissect this with you. Okay? He says, the future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely and consciously create circumstance. What are you saying there? He didn't say I can go back and forth of thinking my circumstances or what I want. He said it must. We have to consciously create the circumstance of how we want to live in our mind. Well, right here, what is he saying? Image. That's the starting point of this. Okay? Then he says, we must translate vision into being, thinking of into thinking from. What does that mean? See, you guys got to get really good at this. Are you thinking of, or are you thinking from? And I'll tell you how you're going to know this. If you've normalized your goal that is already done, it will be impossible for it to happen. You're doing it right. You're thinking from. Most people are thinking of. Then you could look at the type of decisions you're making. Am I making decisions that are comfortable, or am I making decisions that are bold? When you're making bold decisions, you're thinking from. Okay? What keeps people from their goal is they're always thinking of, so their goal is way out here in the future. It's way over there. Okay? Then he says, imagination must center itself in some state and view the world from that state. What does he say? Frequencies. I've got to be on the frequency of the good I desire. Well, if I'm attached and I start complaining about a result, I'm not coming from the state of already achieving it. Okay? So you have to train yourself that I only think about what I want. When I think about what I want, I'm always in that state. I'm always in that state. Okay? See, Joe was saying his state is going up and down. Sometimes he's at the state of 5 billion, sometimes he's at the state of 1 billion, right? So his state, so that would be his gap. I've got to stay on that state. How does Joe stay on that state? Visualization, auto-suggestion. That's how he's going to stay on that state. Because it's not part of his program yet, because if it was, he'd already have the result. He says, thinking from the end, there's a word he's going to use. He says, thinking from the end is an intense perception of the world of fulfilled desire. I just said that. It's got to be an intense perception. That's all I see is why I can do it. That's all I see is why I can do it. Why I can do it. Why can I build a kick-ass company? Why can I take people's results and transform them? Whatever you guys do. That's what you've got to think from. Then he says, thinking from the state desire is creative living. Most people are in survival. They're constantly in survival mode. If you're in survival mode, you're coming from the physical side of your personality, and I promise you, you're not going to create quantum leap that way. But when you're coming from the spiritual side, you're using your power. You're using your higher faculties. You're using this other gear that is inside of you that knows how to do it. Okay? And that's the state that you have to come from. Every time you guys are attached to something, you're ignorant. Ignorance is just not knowing. So how do we get more confidence? Let's go back to confidence for a second. How do you get more confidence in a thing? You leverage other people who's already done it. You get better information, and then you implement it. Right? Like, I didn't all of a sudden get great confidence. I had to get much better information. You know, my mentor, when I first got into this, he was telling me stuff that was like foreign to me. Like completely foreign to me. You know, but I changed from him. And that's study every day. If you don't study every day, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. And I will tell you this. You do not deserve to win if you don't study every day. Like, put that in your mind. You do not deserve to win. I promise you that. You do not deserve to win if you stay in your comfort zone. You do not deserve to win, and you won't win. I promise you, you will not win. The goal always demands whatever it takes, and it's always going to be whatever it takes. Go ahead.
I want to be clear on the word study, because that can be like, oh, study, look at a book. But it's study like your morning routine, where you're focusing on your goal. You're also visioning it. You're
That's not
talking
study.
to yourself. That's separate.
That's
so
separate.
study, that is, or
No, that isn't.
it is to be clear.
So study would be looking at where do I want to improve the most, okay? And then you're doing the repetition of listening to it over and over again, over and over.
So if I'm listening to like your podcast, or I'm listening to the meeting of the week or something like that.
That would be study.
Okay.
That would be study, but
and then you
with,
take it from there.
But you've got to say, like, if I'm studying a thing, let's say you're studying one of my lessons.
Yeah.
I would look at what do I need to study the most? Like, where do I want to improve the most? And I would study in that area, okay? But I would study it minimum every day for 30 days. Every day for 30 days.
So you identify that one thing, and then
Yeah.
you focus on that for the 30 days.
Yeah, for the 30 days. And I just keep listening over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, I keep listening. And I always like teaching it to someone. I always say when I first was doing this, I would teach it to my dogs. Like, because once you teach it, now it's visceral. Now it's a part of you. You know, if you don't, and your paradigm is going to try to do this. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. Okay? So, but we have to understand, study is not an action step. Okay, your morning routine is not an action step. You're building your self-worth. You're building your self-esteem. Okay? And I want you to think about this, Sonia, for you.